We'll take questions now, and I'll call on people as you raise your hands. And please do keep your questions as questions so that we can hear from the panelists, and keep your questions as brief as you can. Yes, in the back.
Hi, my name is Elaine Wilson from the Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, and I'm so glad to be here. And also, this is addressed to, and also the panels was really great, to the council person. I understand that there's a couple of letters that were issued out by Kilpatrick to Granholm in reference to the debt that is owed to the city. And then there were other comments in reference to we can't seem to find the documents, all these kinds of things. I'm trying to figure out why is it that it's so difficult to trace documents that were issued out to the state, between the state and the city government, that they can't seem to find. That to me is very difficult to believe, because Governor Granholm is still living, Kilpatrick is still living, and all the other politicians during that time, they're still all here. So it seems to me you would just have them all come together. Here's what we did, and here's what is owed. Please comment on that. Very simple strategy. Get together at the table.
Thank you for your question. I mean, I'll say, as it relates to finding a document, there are honestly documents I received last week that I probably couldn't find if I went back to look for them today. I mean, it's just, it's human nature. The city, and I can't speak for the state why they did or did not find a document. And I haven't been in the mayor's office looking for any documents. But I can say that when each mayor comes and each mayor goes, nobody's there looking over their shoulder, making sure that they've that they've properly filed documents or stored them away, or so. And there are a million reasons why it could be somebody doesn't want to find the documents. I have no idea, so I can't answer that question. What I can say is the parties who are here today are talking, are negotiating. It doesn't mean we're agreeing on everything. I mean, some of the negotiations are heated, but the people, including the mayor, who are at the city right now responsible for governing, are talking to the people in Lansing who are responsible for governing, and we're trying to find a solution short of an emergency financial manager, because nobody in Detroit thinks that's acceptable.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a Detroit resident in the New Center area, and the word that I didn't hear from anybody was the B word, and that was bankruptcy, because from almost every speaker that I heard, that there's no way to cut expenses to solve the problem, that the problems seem to resolve around some long-term legacy costs in terms. And the other part of my comment is that the emphasis on process reminds me of somebody being struck by a car in 8 Mile, and Southfield and Detroit are trying to argue about which EMS is going to treat you. It just seems to me that we're at this crisis situation. We do need the intervention. And I didn't come in here thinking this, that it almost seems that bankruptcy is the only out of this. I'm asking if
Can I just say one very quick thing? It's not a crisis like a meteor is going to hit us, right? It's a crisis in that in a particular date and time, a bill comes due, right? And you either have the money or you don't have the money to pay it, right? And so the reason why I make the distinction is because there are lots of things that people can do to give yourself room to figure out the best course of action, right? Rather than just focus on the fact that there's a crisis, and therefore you have to act right this second and take the first available solution off the shelf. Okay, so you can imagine emergency, bridge loans. You could imagine, there are all kinds of things that could happen if in fact, and I would argue that if you're coming to some kind of agreement, you're going to see some kind of bridging situation in the next couple of weeks until something is worked out. But but I think that other people can speak to bankruptcy. But let's just remember that it's not a natural disaster we're facing, okay? And for that reason, we shouldn't put aside other potential ways of thinking about it.
I just want to add to that because that question comes up a lot. And something that a lot of people don't understand is that no city in this country on its own has the right to file bankruptcy. States decide what the law around municipal bankruptcy is. And in the U.S., it's about half and half. Some states have decided, city, you can do this on your own. Some states have decided, city, you have to go through us. In the state of Michigan, the only way for a municipality to file bankruptcy is through Public Act 4. So people ask that question all the time, well, what about bankruptcy, or why don't you? The only way to bankruptcy in the state of Michigan is through Public Act 4. And it's interesting because an emergency manager can come in, sell all the assets, they can lay off all the people, privatize all the services, and then recommend bankruptcy. So the law is inherently flawed again.
I mean, I wrote a paper on the implications of a Detroit bankruptcy. The practical reality is it would be 5 or 10 years of litigation. It cost the city of Vallejo, California, $10 million to go to bankruptcy, and that's a city about the size of Flint. So you're probably looking at a $100 million legal bill. And plus the implications for the state and other municipalities would be potential, large credit downgrades. So I don't think it's a workable solution under the current federal laws around bankruptcy, even if it wasn't through PA4, even if Michigan changed that process to be more like, say, California, where a municipality could declare bankruptcy. I think it's still not a very workable solution.
Anyone else can jump in. In a democratic republic, governance
the question was, what can Americans do about our truly embarrassing rate of voting? That if I had the answer to that, I'd probably have the answer to our deficit as well. I think that we have to be inspired. One of the things that President Obama was able to do was inspire people in a way that we hadn't been inspired in a very long time, which was why when you went to the voting booths here, the lines were out of the parking lots. When I stood in line to vote, there was a group of 18-year-old boys, pants sagging, hat to the back, what we see and assume, they must be going to the ball court or they must be going wherever, any kind of negative stereotypes that enter our head. They were standing in line. They stood with me for 45 minutes, and they were so excited about the fact that they were voting for the very first time. We need leaders to step up who can inspire people, and I think people will go out to vote when they can vote for something and someone that they believe in.
Could I add to that? I mean, I worked in the precincts in the election in 2000 in Detroit, and that was the beginning of the use of ID to challenge people's voting ability. Okay, this has been a 12-year process since the motor voter. Remember motor voter? Remember the old League of Women Voters? Remember all of those things? Completely destroyed by a political movement that wants actually a political movement that worries more about false positives, people who might be voting who shouldn't, than it worries about the fact that voting is dropping off because lots of people can't get access to a voting booth or ID in order to vote. And this election in 2012, you're going to see, and it's not a joke, more people challenged at the polls by professional challengers than ever before, probably since the days of Jim Crow. And it's going to happen to white people and Latinos and African Americans. Okay, because there is in this country a movement that worries about illegal voting more than it does than the health of our democracy. Truly.
Over here on the left. You didn't have a question, ma'am?
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. That's very nice.
Comment with regard. A comment with regard to the paperwork, the document get to Detroit. Treasurer, state treasurer, met with the Council of Baptist pastors earlier. He acknowledged that debt. However, he observed that no future legislator public questions. One, types of things that HUD did that made and the second question. All of these long-range things have to be resolved if Detroit is to become self-sustaining. Find the standards against which governors' success or failure will be judged against. He's getting away with murder now by just
Mr. Stanton?
I agree.
I would just answer briefly. A major concern is, for example, in devastated communities such as Pontiac with huge rates of housing vacancies and unemployment, people can't afford, the policy of HUD is to continue to create new housing units.
Yeah.
Absolutely out of the world for what's happening, in particular in these communities. And that money, if we were at least somewhat accommodating in our public policy, we would use that money in other ways to build the community in other ways that were more acceptable, more helpful.
Okay, last question. Yes, right here.
Who gave up her turn?
Oh,
So judgmental.
The lollipop effect. Okay, I'm licking the microphone. Excuse me. This is a comment, but I would like Ms. Jenkins to be the one to return the comment. I'm an educator by background, and I don't care whether I educate kids or adults. I would like to see a city council and a mayor model the cooperation that we teach our students. It looks like, maybe it's the media's fault, what my comment is, we need city council to inspire. That's what drove me to ask for the microphone. We need city council to inspire publicly. They may be working hard behind the scenes, but we need our elected officials to cooperate publicly. And when I first moved to Detroit in 1988, my attitude, my analysis of the city was it was very hopeful. I moved here from New York City. the violence of crowding. Detroit has a reputation for being the largest homeowner state in the country. Why is that not the best public witness and capital that we have? And what does city government do about, that's my question, what does city government do about bringing forward our assets as well as solving our problems?
Thank you for your question. I'll start by inviting you to any city council meeting. Please come and sit through an entire city council meeting, because we highlight the assets of Detroit all the time. Before I came here, I was at Osborne High School talking to students at Osborne about all the great things happening in our city, because our kids need to hear that too. They need to know that they live in a place that's worth living. So we're highlighting the assets all the time. Now, why you only hear the negative is a question you'll have to ask the media, because I can't answer that question. What I can tell you is that your elected officials, the majority, some of us can do better than others, I'll admit, but the majority of us are always highlighting the positive things in the city of Detroit, like the fact that this past year we've gotten more than 10,000 new jobs downtown. That doesn't make it to the papers. The other piece of it is the legislative and executive branch are set up as checks and balances. So naturally, the way our democracy is set up, there is going to be tension between the two branches of government. I mean, we will never avoid that, because when you have 9 people on a body, you have 9 different opinions. So we're going to agree and disagree with each other. And then you have the mayor. We're going to agree and disagree with the mayor. But more than 95% of what the mayor sends to council is approved by 8 or 9 people. We have 9 council members. You're not going to read that in the paper. You're going to read about the 5% or the one time that there's a disagreement. So I think that that's a question that we all have to ask the media, that we continue to support by buying papers and watching the news. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And on that positive note, we will end. Thank you to all of the panelists.